we are, and welcome to another episode of the Friday Night Movie Podcast. Today we've got an awesome episode for you today. One might say this could be a favorite episode because we have the host of Finding Favorites is on the show, Finding Favorites with Leah Jones with us. And that's Leah Jones, of course. Very excited to talk to Leah. But before we get to Leah, one important reminder, as I've been reminded by the podcasting intelligentsia, if you love this podcast, please rate and review it on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you can. Give it some stars, maybe write some nice things about it, as it helps us raise awareness about the pod. And then one more thing before we get to Leah, and that is my sister Becky is here. Lily is off for today, but Becky, how are you doing?
I am so good today. I actually have an answer. Okay, I know I rarely have an answer, but I went surfing twice this week for the first time in like truly nearly 2 years because I've been busy being pregnant and having a second baby. So I haven't surfed in a couple of years now. And I got in the water twice this week. Huge preemptive shout out. I know we do shout outs at the end to our friend Joey from Living in a Van episode.
Is he living in a van right now during
Actually,
COVID?
No, he hasn't. He got an apartment during COVID.
Okay.
So
it seems like a van would have been safer. That guy really just flies in the face of intuition.
No, but van life isn't. Well, you think about a lot of van life actually requires you to use public services like coffee shops and things like that. So no, he's renting an apartment. But I did use one of his boards that he stores at our house. So thanks, Joey, for lending me one of your surfboards. I mean, it's been a great week. So
I'm glad. And thank you, Joey, for giving us that van life street cred, because now it seems like everyone's grown in a van. Okay, yeah. Let us introduce our guest for today. And it's I feel extra lucky that we have her since Lily is not here, because Leah is herself a pro podcaster. Leah Jones, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. I feel like pro is a little overselling. Like I've been podcasting for a couple months, but I took some good advice from a total rando, and I got a very nice microphone set up. So I'm moving along in my podcast journey.
But I do want to say, I would classify you as a pro because I actually think you have a wonderful sounding radio voice.
Well, thank you.
Like your radio voice reminds me of someone from This American Life. Like I could listen to you tell stories all day. So in my book, you're a pro.
And
I'm going to add that to my LinkedIn right now.
That's an endorsement. This American Life voice. And I'll also say that we bonded. So Leah and I are both part of the ROI community. I've talked about them before, and we've had some guests that are from the ROI community, from the Schusterman Family Foundation. And we were at a retreat together, and we were sitting next to each other. And I don't exactly know how it came up, but we immediately bonded over our love of podcasts, and very specifically, How Did This Get Made? Which on Friday Night Movie, that's the GOAT. That's the greatest of all time.
It is so good.
It is. That's the dream. That's the aspiration, inspiration.
And I, fancy myself, one of the early adopters of the show and sort of knowing a lot about it. And here I am chatting with Leah and dropping some knowledge. And Leah just blew by me and lapped me with her expert knowledge of How Did This Get Made? And then even more precisely, Jason Mantzoukas, who will be our topic today.
Don't you guys find, hold on quickly, don't you find that when you're talking about podcasts or comedy or stuff like that with people, and they don't, they're not into How Did This Get Made, and they're like, oh yeah, no, that show's not for me, I judge them a bit. I'm like, what? I don't know, I feel like I have some sort of disconnect, and that's pretty much me with all people, because I think other than you two, I don't know anyone else that loves the podcast as much as me.
It is one of the only reasons I stay on Facebook is a How Did This Get Made fan group that I'm in.
All right.
Of amazing people who I have.
There is one. Cool. I didn't even know that. That's amazing.
It is a spin-off of a Bitch Sesh fan group. And so it's a very feminist, no bullshit, very fun group. And the last time they were in town for live shows in Chicago, we all met for dinner.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
We had dinner together. We bought tickets near each other.
That's so much fun.
It was so fun.
See, I would totally be a part of a group like that. like people you automatically feel connected to. Yeah.
But to the point about pro podcasting, I feel like that is the spirit of podcasting at its deepest level, because the whole point of podcasting is this intimate kind of punk rock experience. It doesn't need massive production. You don't need to be hugely famous to do it. I mean, Paul Scheer, Jason Mantzoukas, and Diane Raphael are, I think, quite famous now. But when we started listening to that show, they were just sort of like these obscure comedy folks that like people who are really into comedy like, but now they're, much, much bigger names. And the bond that you have with people who like it is just so unique and real. Like we just had our guests a couple weeks ago, Stevie Jackson and Chris Royce, who host the Buddies Without. Did I say it right? The Buddies Without Borders. I said Borders Without Buddies when we had them on the show. But we bonded over our mutual love of Janet Varney's podcast. And there's like an intimacy that you get with fellow podcast fans that I think is just fantastic. Yeah,
I agree. It is really, it makes you feel like you've all been to the same party, and all of you were the person just kind of sitting off to the side eavesdropping on a group that was having a really intense conversation. But like all of the fans, all 2,000 of us in the fan group I'm in, we were all like the one person at the party. So it's a really interesting, and then you have to have other people to talk about what you just heard.
Absolutely. And I think the thing with podcasts is you feel like you are friends with the hosts. For especially a How Did This Get Made type, the chat style, that's the most successful ones are where I feel like if I walk up to them and I start chatting with them, I'm like, I've already been, in conversation with them, even though they don't know me at all.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that brings me to your podcast, Finding Favorites, which I think does that so beautifully, because the tagline is finding your favorites or something without the algorithm. And it's really about people's own idiosyncratic love for things. And you learn so much about people when they talk about something they love.
Mm-hmm. It has been so fun to do. I have some episodes coming up. I've got one that will have already been released with a local journalist named Robert Lowerzel about 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh, wow.
Which he saw for the first time when he was 7 years old.
Oh, man.
I cannot wait to hear that, because that is a movie that when I think about it, it just bends my mind.
Yeah.
And
I'm very excited.
I'm willing and able to talk about that movie all the time because I still don't understand it.
That's a household favorite here for us. For us, it's a sincere favorite of my husband's. We watch it often enough. I have a spiritual connection, I would say, to that movie. So, yeah.
Great. Well, it will be out tomorrow in real life.
So what made you come up with the show?
I came up with the show so this is like the friendship we have with podcasters. When Mark Maron's girlfriend Lynn Shelton died suddenly.
Oh yeah.
I felt more deeply impacted by her. I felt truly like a friend's partner had died. And I sent him a letter and sent my regards. And then I wrote a long blog post about my friend Mark Maron, my friend Nicole Byer.
Nicole Byer.
I love her.
She has been one of our North Stars during quarantine for our family because of Nailed It.
She's phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And then I drew a map. And I started with podcasting. For me, I came late to the listening game. So for me, podcast starts with West Wing Weekly. Josh Malina, Rishikesh.
I know about that.
Josh Malina,
I haven't listened
awesome.
to it, but that's a very cool one.
So that I was like, well, I love West Wing. I'll listen to this. And then I was like, oh, well, that's just 1 hour a week, and then it's gone. But I have other commutes to fill. And so then Gilmore Girls reboot had been announced. So I was like, I guess I got to get back into Gilmore Girls. And so I started listening to the podcast Gilmore Guys, which is where I found Jason Mantzoukas, which is where I found How Did This Get Made. And then essentially anything Jason has ever guested on is how I found every other podcast I listen to.
Awesome.
So I drew this map out about like, how did I become a podcast fan? Another friend saw it and he drew the family tree of of who he likes in comedy, starting with Best Week Ever, Paul Scheer, Paul F. Tompkins, and then going from there about all the comedy he likes. And when I saw that he was also able to do a mind map about his relationship with comedy, I said, okay, people have stories to tell about how they found their favorites and the journey it took them on. And it turns out people love spending an hour talking about their favorite thing.
It does, and it shows.
Yep.
Because what I find I listened, I was catching up on your latest one with Amy talking about, Amy last name I'm forgetting right now, but she's just talking about her family's love of Disney. And and in your intro you talked about, you were going to talk about Disney parks and all these things, and I recently just went to Disney with my wife, and I'm not sure how much I wanted to listen about Disney parks because I just like went through it. It's like PTSD. But when Amy starts talking about the bonding of her family, that bonding moment of when she and her family got together and watched Frozen, and how this was like a foundational moment for them, I was instantly transported to her whole story, and I loved hearing it. So this is a very much needed podcast, and I love that it bucks the trend of the algorithm, because the algorithm, while it's really nice on Netflix to have it recommended, I feel like algorithms also become just reinforcing of your biases, and knowing good people who are smart, who you respect, is going to actually challenge you to go outside your biases.
Yeah, and I will say, with full transparency, my goal is for Jason Mantzoukas to be a guest on my podcast. It's all of our goal, right? It's a shared vision.
I actually say, I would say sort of. I mean, that's my goal for you. I'll tell you about our situation. We'll talk about it when it comes to meeting him. I'm almost like afraid to meet him, but my my hope is you get Jason as a guest.
Thank you.
Before I would ever get it. I had my own version of that in another scenario. So,
but I before I even launched the podcast, I wrote his people and asked. I invited him on before I had published a single episode, and they very politely said no. But they said they were so nice about it and so fast. Within 4 hours, I had a no, which I think is really good for a publicity team.
Absolutely,
that's wonderful. Yeah. That is very nice, because it means that even though they're saying no, they're paying attention.
Yeah,
and they care, and they realize that fans really care about him, and there's a connection there, and they're not going to just ignore you for 6 weeks or 6 months or whatever. So,
and it means he cares, because those are probably his expectations.
Yeah.
We had my podcast dream was to have Janet Varney on the show, and 2+ years into the podcast, she agreed to be on the show, and it was like amazing. But
I will say the way that we worked towards it was by building a connection directly with her over social media, and being really active in everything that she does, which you get the credit for, Shai, because I barely can read my tweets, let alone actually send one out properly.
I wasn't, but let's be clear. I wasn't doing it to get her on the show. I was doing it.
No, you weren't.
Genuinely
No, but I'm saying that's what I'm saying is that I think when you build relationships from a sincere place, or for example, like you, Leah, you start a podcast from a sincere place. If you build it, they will come, man. You as Shai says, you lead with your heart.
Yeah,
and the good things will come back.
And if you listen to Roxane Gay's interview on Why Won't You Date Me with Nicole Byer, she met her wife because her wife started a podcast in order to meet Roxane. And she had a podcast for years, and she got guests and did episodes that she thought Roxane Gay would love, and kept asking her to be on the podcast. Like every few years, she would ask Roxane to be on the podcast, and her publicist kept saying no. And then eventually they get to meet, or they have mutual friends, and her now wife, spoiler alert, says, well, I programmed my podcast for you. And then Roxane went and looked and saw it had been all been a love letter to Roxane Gay.
Very romantic.
Very romantic.
That's amazing. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I mean, and I love that, and I love the story that you owned it from straight up and just went to Jason. Like, I feel like podcasters sometimes are like, oh, my show's a small thing. I mean, I get that way too, but like we all put a lot of work into these, and we're proud of our work, and like, it's a democratic field. Like, meaning it is as even a field as there is. Like, I don't think that Michelle Obama's podcast, I'm excited for her, it's awesome, is any more special, other than her, her bringing her authenticity, obviously, but like, than what anybody else is doing. And that's why I love this medium so much. You have a microphone, you got a recording device, you got a show. And speaking of the show, let's get into the show and talk about Jason Mantzoukas for real now. We sort of danced around it a little bit. But okay, so you talked a little bit about the origin, but where did you discover Jason Mantzoukas, Leah?
I discovered Jason Mantzoukas on Gilmore Guys podcast. And so the Gilmore Girls reboot had been announced, so I was trying to catch up. And I heard him on an episode, and I went back to try and pinpoint what episode it was, and I can't figure it out. But he said something really thoughtful and caring about rape culture and how it was portrayed on Gilmore Girls. And I was like, man, who's this like really insightful kind of like with it guy? Jason Mantzoukas. And so then I found like his Mark Maron interview. I found his, I wrote it down because I was never, his Kevin Pollak interview.
Oh, Kevin Pollak chat show interview. I've heard that interview. That interview is amazing. And
his Pete Holmes interview. And so I used to go to open mics with Pete back in the day. So I listened to those long form interviews, and I was telling my friends, I was like, this guy, I just have this weird crush on this guy based on these long interviews. And people were like, you have a crush on Rafi from The League? And I was like, what are you talking about?
That's really funny.
And then
That's really funny to work that way to it, to not know that he's Rafi first.
Right. So it makes a huge difference because I knew he was like, I would say like I knew he was a thoughtful feminist who had gone to therapy for years before I got to Rafi. Because if I had started with Rafi, I probably would have written him off, not ever experienced How Did This Get Made? And so I'm really grateful for the order that I found him. And then I got into How Did This Get Made? And I am just a super fan. And I've been to, like, I've flown to LA to go to a live show. I've been to...
So much fun.
So fun.
What a great reason to travel. Can we just say that? What a great reason to travel, to go see your favorite band or recording of a podcast or, something like it's just a fun, great reason.
It was so fun. It was at the Largo, which is such a special venue.
Yeah.
Becky and I went together. Becky and I had an LA trip together, and we went to a Largo show. We just picked, like, out of a hat. Tig Notaro was doing a show, and so we just went.
Cool.
It was amazing, yeah.
That's very cool. That's really the reverse. I found him as Rafi first, and I really didn't like Rafi at first. I was like, I loved the first season of The League. I thought it was like perfect. And then I'm looking at this thing being like, why do they introduce this character? And he's kind of there all the time. And then and then after a certain amount of time, he became, of course, one of my favorite parts of the show. And then that's when I started looking more into him. And the Kevin Pollak chat show is when I learned about him as this sensitive person. What about you, Beck?
So same origin, The League, exact same feelings about him, to the point where then all of a sudden you're like, why am I obsessed with his character? And it's not funny unless he's in a scene. Like, you kind of go through this really strange arc with that show with him. But it was the first episode of How Did This Get Made that I ever listened to, which was Bloodsport. That was the first episode I listened to.
The buns.
The buns. The Maroonies and the buns. And it was from that moment on, and I know exactly where I was when I listened to it. That moment on, I just immediately became addicted to the show, and my obsession with like him grew because he is so funny. And then as you really get into the show and you listen to it, there are certain like deep and insightful conversations that actually do happen around these films and topics. And you get these little hits of like, wait a minute, who is this guy? And then as I learned more about him on other podcasts and shows, realizing he's a very multi-layered comedian person. So, yeah.
And I will say that on dating apps, if I mention, you know, like my Hollywood crush is Jason Mantzoukas, if a guy replies to me and says something about how Rafi is his favorite Mantzoukas character, it's a red flag.
Okay.
Got it.
It's like, oh, if that's why you love him, we will not get along. So
I think that's part of what makes him great. If he was really like Rafi is the epitome of the worst person. He is the worst habits. He's the worst treatment of people, treatment of women, right? Like he's not even like an id. He's just a total degenerate, and like everything about him is terrible. Part of what makes that even funnier is when you realize how sensitive and like kind a person Jason Mantzoukas,
right? Like how woke he is to the joke. Like he gets why everything that Rafi does is extremely horrible. Yes, that does definitely. It's part of it when you can look at it from this meta perspective.
Right, like people who see Rafi. And I mean, we've all repeated Rafi jokes, but like who think that that's the way they should act have missed the point.
Yes,
exactly.
Rafi is a villain, even when they go into his backstory. I mean, he's still the worst.
There is not a single character on the League whose behavior you should emulate.
Correct.
That's true. Although, you're right. I mean, sometimes I sympathize with Andre, but the part of why I sympathize with Andre is that Paul Scheer, Mantzoukas' partner on How Did This Get Made, has proven to me over time to be one of the also best people with fans, and
yes, for sure.
And the work he puts into that show, because he does a lot of the heavy lifting.
Just the fact that when he went on Nailed It, he went as a contestant.
It was so good.
You know about Paul Scheer, he brings it. If he's gonna come and do something, he's gonna come fully committed. And I thought that was super cool.
When I went to the last Chicago show I went to, I took them thank you notes because Nicole Byer said once that when people are like really emotional with her in a meet and greet, that she can't respond and she would rather get like a note that she can read later. And so I wrote them all thank you notes, and my thank you note to Paul was recognizing that without Paul Scheer, there is no How Did This Get Made. He does so much from the many episodes and running the show, like emceeing the show, like it doesn't exist without his work. And so I wanted to recognize that he's like really the backbone that keeps it going and allows us to keep Zooks in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because otherwise I feel like Mantzoukas, I want to talk about what he's really like. He seems a little bit like a hermit. I mean, no social media. Doesn't want people touching him, which you recognized with your T-shirt. You showed us a picture of you. Becky, have you seen the picture that Leah sent? Click on the link in the notes and you'll see.
Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. No. I actually did click, and then it's so funny. Yeah, I have to, my web browser, I didn't actually, I opened it up and then I entered.
And he doesn't like to be touched.
Is that you? Oh, my God.
On stage, I'm guarding him at the recording of the Pinocchio episode.
I just listened to that one.
So during the Second Opinions, I got on stage to guard Jason from being touched by Second Opinion singers.
That's really funny. Did they try to touch him, or that's just...
They try to touch him all the time. People like go up and they try to shake his hand or give him a high five or give him a gift, and he's so anxious about it. So I had this special shirt made, and I tweeted at Paul Scheer, and I said, if you need a guard during Second Opinions, I'm sitting down front. And so before Second Opinions, Paul Scheer, in front of a sold-out Chicago theater, is Leah here?
That's
why he's so great.
So great.
And to his credit, I mean, he responds on Twitter better than pretty much any famous person I know. Like I have written many times, and he'll just respond with a GIF or a comment or a thank you or something like that. But especially about the Hanukkah episode of Nailed It, I've written multiple times because my kids can't stop watching that episode, and he writes back every time I say, "Oh, my kids are watching it again."
Aww.
And that's great. So you were on. Okay, so let's talk about what Jason's really like. We talked about his sensitive.
Hold on. We talked about the fact that he's not on social media. And how he's kind of a hermit, right? He doesn't want to be touched and all that kind of stuff. But he's on like all of these podcasts, right? He's popping up all over the place, like everywhere. But you don't know it unless you're tracking it. And he's not on social media promoting it. So it's like this trail of breadcrumbs. So I feel like his appearances on all these podcasts and shows and the Nailed It's and this and that, that's his social media. It's its own like frequency.
Like Mantzoukas-fest, right?
Yeah,
like it's
exactly.
like it's its own what was it? The Taco had the not social network, the fish board or whatever it was. It's like that.
It is exactly like that. And you got to be on like the Zook's frequency to get to like follow him on social media, basically. So what's with the no touching and all that? Like so we've talked about him as a sensitive person. He's like a germaphobe, right?
Or is it because of his allergies?
He's really severe allergies.
Yeah. I think it's the see, now I'm going to act like he's my friend, and he's not, right?
Right. We learned this term
we
last
actually
week.
talked about this a couple of weeks ago.
A few weeks ago, we learned this term.
Like
the parasocial relationship, or
fanship.
Fanship.
Our friends Stevie and Chris introduced the concept of fanship, but before you know this person that you are into, you are a fan of them, but in a way where you feel like you're friends, but not in a creepy way, like in a genuine way.
Yeah. So he has said in a podcast interview that his therapist has told him that his hypervigilance around food, which he has to have because eggs will kill him, that he's applied that appropriate hypervigilance to other areas of his life where it's not appropriate, like the touching or handshaking or being around people. And then, except for now, in this pandemic, his greatest fear is now appropriate, right? So now, like, everything he's ever been afraid of is an actual problem.
It's like the people who walk around with the foil on their heads who are.
I gotta say, for someone who doesn't like to be like touched or in close contact with others, working on sets, like being an actor on a stage or on a location is like the worst thing you could do. Like completely counterintuitive to that thing, because you were surrounded by like 100 people all the time and constantly being touched. So.
Do we know of him having romantic relationships? I don't know anything about his, like...
With Tammy Taylor from Friday Night Lights, Coach Taylor's wife.
What? He and Connie Britton?
No.
They've been broken up for like 10 years.
What?
But yes, he and Connie Britton were a thing.
No way.
So then when you like imagine...
Exploding, there's no way.
Yes.
That's amazing. So like in her Spin City days?
It might have been in her Friday Night Lights days.
Oh, wow. That's unbelievable. That's amazing. That's crazy.
That is the only public relationship he's ever had. And he was her like comedy writer boyfriend. He wasn't on anything at the time. That's when he had like given up on his acting career and was just writing. And so there's a couple red carpet photos of them together. Like, not even a beard. His beard, I think, is his Connie Britton breakup beard.
What?
I mean, I'd grow a beard if I broke up with Connie Britton.
Right?
I would not be a man. I would not be, like, the same person if I had dated her and we broke up. Yeah. My wife actually met her once and grabbed a photo with her. She helped her get into there was some event where Connie Britton was speaking in D.C., and Allie ran into her outside. Allie loves her. And Allie ran into her outside and helped her get into the building and was like, can we take a picture first, though? So she helped her. All right, so we talked about it. So he's a writer, he's an actor. What that he hasn't done yet would you like to see him do?
Oh, I want to see him as a lead in a rom-com.
So does Lily. Our sister.
Lily really wants that, too.
Because he is not like your typical... rom-com sort of like leading, like Paul Rudd is an obvious rom-com guy, and he should continue to do rom-coms till the end of time. And then you have your sort of more like nebbishy characters, like who's a good example of like your Jason Biggs in although I haven't seen him in something in a while, but like your Jason Biggs, David Schwimmer type of nebbishy character. But Jason Mantzoukas is a totally other different.
Or even like a Seth Rogen, Seth Rogen.
Oh yeah, Seth Rogen,
right? In what's it, the Charlie Theron movie?
The political one.
Yeah.
Long Shot.
Long Shot.
Long Shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So what
fun.
kind of rom-com would it be? Would it be like your typical your Long Shot or your I Love
a
You Man kind
screwball
of
comedy. It would be a screwball comedy, kind of a, like there's all the funny. There have been so many funny spy movies in the last few years, like putting women in the driver's seat of spy comedies.
Spy, like the one with she's amazing with
Is it Kate
Melissa
McKinnon and
McCarthy. No, there's one with Melissa McCarthy just
yeah.
called Spy that like I
That's
laughed
a really
so
good one.
hard my sides hurt during that movie. But then there's the Kate McKinnon, the Spy Who Dumped Me.
Yeah, please. We know
So I
that
think
one.
you take like that kind of energy of a spy comedy, action comedy, but like with a rom-com twist.
So kind of like I'm thinking like Lovebirds a little bit, like Lovebirds with Kumail Nanjiani and Issa Rae.
Oh, that was so good.
That would work really well. Okay, I like that. I like that a lot. That's good. Beck, what about you?
What would I want to see him in?
Yeah.
Oh, I do agree that I think so. I just watched the Long Dumb Road, and I feel like that is a stepping stone to leading in a rom-com kind of, whether it's a spy movie or a Lovebirds kind of thing for sure. Because in that movie, he's still playing a version of the really like the degenerate Mantzoukas character, but he's not, gross Rafi. He's just more unpredictable, wild card, kind of an a-hole guy, maybe with a heart of gold, probably not. Like, he seems pretty messed up. And I feel like, but that's, he's the one of two leading characters in this film. And it's kind of like the most screen time I think I've ever seen him in a single movie. So that sort of feels like a stepping stone to hopefully more like the rom-com role. What was I going to say? What's the one? Oh, I can't think of what it's called for the life of me, but he does play like a romantic interest in it.
Is it one of those like Friends with Babies type of movies?
No, it's the one where it's all the different stories that you're following.
Modern Love?
No, not Modern Love. It's a movie.
This is the one that he's in with his girlfriend at the time, Connie Britton. They're doing IVF.
Okay, no, not that one. But yes, I haven't seen that movie, but I know that one. No, it doesn't. Is it Alison Brie that
Alison
plays?
Brie. Is it Sleeping with Other People? Is it the one where he's with Andrea Savage as they're like a romantic couple?
He plays a school teacher. Oh, or like a librarian or something.
I feel like you're just describing any one of these movies with the intersecting storylines, like Friends with College, Friends with Kids, Friends trying to have babies.
It's one of those that's like, yeah. Hold on, I'm gonna just keep talking.
Okay.
I'm just,
all right. So then,
called.
While we're coming up with that movie, my biggest question that I wanted to ask today, which is, what activity do you most want to do with him? Because he just seems like there's so many fun things that I'd want to do with him. Like, I'd love to, like, having listened to his REM episode of Are You Talking REM to Me with Adam Scott, which I both, like, love, but that reaches a point of, like, just, like, straight up jealousy that I'm not in that conversation because I'm a huge REM fan. I want to sit and listen to music with him. Like, I want to sit and, like, just, like, play each other's songs for hours and just, like, make a mix together. That is my number one activity I want to do with Jason Mantzoukas. How about you all? Beck?
Okay. I mentioned earlier, either I'd want him to be my doula birthing coach while I'm having contractions and pushing a baby out, having him like.
Hopefully he hears this one day.
I do feel, and he agrees. I guess I'd have to have a third kid.
If Jason Mantzoukas agrees to be your doula, you are having a third kid.
I will have a third kid with my husband, but he can be my doula.
That would make a great rom-com. Jason Mantzoukas as a doula. Falls in love with his patient.
But if that couldn't happen, I think it's not as simple. It would be actually pretty epic to go see whatever the newest Fast and Furious movie with him, and then just like go see the movie and like hang out and talk about it after. Like, that would be really simple friend date, That's it. Leah?
Those are such good ideas. I would I would just want to be able to, like, either time travel and have overlapped with him on that 2-year trip he took after college.
Oh, right. I've heard him talk
just like
about
one of his
that.
travel buddies.
Yeah. Like, that sounded, because traveling abroad at that time was so different. So time travel aside, I think it would be really cool to, like, workshop a script with him.
That's cool.
Because he does talk about how so one of the things I think is really insightful is when he talks about, I can't see the DVD from here, like what goes into a good heist movie. And there's this one with, that for many episodes in a row, he kept saying, well, you know what a good movie is? It's this. And I think his way of breaking down a plot and understanding what makes a good movie. I mean, that's what makes How Did This Get Made so good, is that they all understand story, character, and plot. And so I think if I ever had a project that was more than just a wisp of an idea, I think he would be a really good person to workshop a script with.
That
and
is awesome.
And that would be like an ongoing.
And I think that's such a poignant comment about why that show works. I hope everyone who's listening to this, they know we talk about it often, but, like, please go watch that show. I mean, please go listen to that podcast. It's the best. Okay,
Wait,
now...
How to Be Single. The name of the movie is How to Be Single.
Okay, so I wasn't that far off.
No. It's How to Be Single, and he plays Alison Brie's love interest in it. And he's not playing, like, the Mantzoukas dirtbag, like, wild card. He's just, like, an eccentric, I think, like, school teacher or librarian or something, like, cute like that, and he wears, like a cardigan.
That's not the one. Is that the one with Dakota Johnson?
Yeah, and
I saw that movie on a plane.
Yeah,
I like that movie.
It's a super cute. It's, like, surprisingly very, very cute.
And
it's a small part, but he's so cute. It was I think the only time or the first time I'd seen him in a role where he wasn't like playing someone that was, like, kind of disgusting, as he's, like, brought in. He talks about how he's brought in to basically be, like, the ringer in a lot of these movies, to, like, just come in and do, like, that one, like, really wacky, weird part. And in this one, he is, but he's not playing someone gross. He's just playing someone sincere. Anyways, it's very cute. So I could also see that. That's what makes me feel like I could really believe him as a rom-com lead.
And I do think where like the character of Dr. Steve gets in Transparent, like towards the end of Transparent, who he's like becomes not a dirtbag, the character evolves and you get to see a little bit more of his.
I haven't seen the last season, so that would motivate me to. Is that happen in the last season? Because that would motivate me to.
Well,
watch
I think
it a bit more.
In the final musical, which is technically the last season, he's just in the last song. But the last season, that's normal episodes. It's a lot.
Okay. Anyways, moving on.
So on our podcast, we have bits. That's one of our recurring things. We don't have anything as brilliant as Second Opinions, but we do have our signature bit, which we wanted to play with you, Leah, which is called Buy, Rent, or Meh. And Buy, Rent, or Meh is the universal rating system for Friday Night Movie, but it's also a specific game where we give 3 choices to you. And we'll play 2, but we don't always necessarily play every round, otherwise it takes forever. We'll give you 3 things, and you must assign each one to a buy, rent, or meh. Now, buy means, in the old school way of, like, renting and owning movies, a movie you would have bought. Like, you would have bought the VHS.
Okay.
I need to not just tape it off HBO, I need to own this movie. A rent would be a renter. It could be a renter that you rent more than once, but a renter. And then a meh can take on the quality of however you decide to deliver that meh. So it can be the third worst, but it could also be the best, depending on how you use that meh. In rare cases, you can exchange meh for bleh. And that was a later edition. And so we're going to play this first one with Jason Mantzoukas is some of his classic side weirdos that aren't Rafi. Dennis Feinstein from Parks and Rec. Adrian Pimento from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And Derek, Mindy from The Middle Place's boyfriend, from The Good Place. So buy, rent, or meh each one of those.
Becky, do you want to take the first stab at this?
I can go first. Okay.
Okay.
So I am going to, it's a bit of a hard one. I'm going to, I don't have enough, like, I have too much of a fear gene in me to buy Adrian Pimento. I'm not ready for that much of a challenge. So I'm going to have to buy Derek because he is the safest and he's magical. So he can create stuff for me. Then I'm going to rent Adrian Pimento because I think that could be like really fun, wild adventure. But I can't like commit to him because he's still slightly terrifying. And I am maying Dennis Feinstein because I feel like, you know, he definitely has no moral compass, and while hilarious, is like legitimately dangerous to humans and the planet. So
because of his products.
Yeah, his products that like poison you.
I would buy Dennis Feinstein actually because I just loved the idea of a Mantzoukas appearance in one of my favorite shows of all time. And I really enjoy Tom Haverford trying to pitch his perfumes to Dennis Feinstein in that episode in the Snake Hole Lounge. Like, that just is, to me, still... I still think is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I'm going to rent Derek because I do like that Derek is a sort of nice... He's weird, but he's a nicer character. He's almost like a desexualized Rafi, and I like that as a range thing. And I'm gonna meh Adrian Pimento because while I love Brooklyn Nine-Nine, to me, Adrian Pimento always felt a little bit forced into Brooklyn Nine-Nine for obvious reasons. Who wouldn't want Mantzoukas in their show as a love interest for Stephanie Beatrice's character? But I just like, to me, Adrian Pimento kind of took me out of it. Even though I loved being in Mantzoukas-verse in those moments, it seemed a little bit forced in. Okay, Leah, we've stalled long enough for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So I think I am going to buy Adrian Pimento because I think Adrian...
We all have different answers.
We all have different answers. I think he is just the wildest of his dirtbags, but still sometimes has like a sweet core. There's something sweet in there. And I think was important to, what's Stephanie Beatrice's character's name?
Santiago. No, that's Amy. Amy Santiago. It's Rosa. Rosa, yeah.
I think also where you look at him and their story arc and what it meant to her longer story arc, it's such a worthwhile character. I'm going to rent Derek, because essentially that's what hitting the plunger does, right? It restarts them, so that's like a rental. And he comes back better every time, slightly improved.
Yes.
And I got a meh Dennis Feinstein. I can just imagine it's every person wearing terrible perfume that ever walked into a synagogue oneg, and I hold him personally responsible. So I'm done.
One of my favorite Dennis Feinstein points of information is how he changed his name to that because he thought it sounded exotic, right? I love that. Yeah,
it is exotic in small town Indiana.
All right, so real life Jasons. Jason on Nailed It, Jason on How Did This Get Made, or the category Leah entered, which is sincere fan Jason, like on other shows like Doughboys and Binge Mode and things like that. So how do you assign values there?
Go ahead. Sorry.
No. You go ahead. I'm just trying to look at the notes. Oh, okay. Real life Jasons. All right, got it. Okay.
So like for me, I'm like, so for me, obviously, How Did This Get Made is my I'm gonna buy Nailed It because his Nailed It makes my kids so happy that, like, if I had to keep one, own one, it's gonna have to be Nailed It. How Did This Get Made? I love, but like, How Did This Get Made? I almost love too much, because so like I hoard the episodes, and then now they start to expire, so they're ones I haven't heard, like the Frogtown one, yeah. So I realized, like, but Nailed It. If he's on Nailed It, I'm gonna watch that every time. And then the fan mode Jason, I really like. And it's interesting because that's more or less how I want to spend my time with him if I met him. But in terms of consuming media, it's the one I do least of.
So I'm going to go by on Sincere Fan Jason, because he like makes things happen by being a vocal and public fan of things, right? It's how we got into John Wick was by publicly loving the John Wick series. It's and him guesting on something is often how I find a new podcast. So Sincere Fan Jason has brought a lot of media into my life, and I'm grateful for that. So bye. And then shoot, this game is hard because How Did This Get Made? I love. Nailed It, I love. But so Nailed It is going to get meh from me, only because if this was about Nicole Byer, it would be bye. But
she's amazing.
So I'm going to give it a very qualified meh, because I feel very uncomfortable.
Well delivered meh. This is how you know you have a pro podcaster. They get the bit.
And that's what we mean by meh. You make the meh your own. You own that meh. It doesn't have to be a meh of anger or disgust. Okay, right. I want to do a spin on this. When we say Sincere Fan Jason, there's a Jason element we have not discussed yet, which is his love, passion, and commitment to the Harry Potter series, where I don't feel that way about Harry Potter, but every time he brings it up, Shai, it reminds me of you the way you talk about Star Wars. And it means so much to me, right? That he is so committed in his fanship to something else that it permeates essentially every conversation he has. There is a way for him to bring it back to Harry Potter.
And I have enjoyed that he's also been willing to take J.K. Rowling down a few notches because of their statements while still loving the Harry Potter universe. Because I do think that's, when these universes become something of their own and you love them, like, sometimes you just want the creators to stay quiet.
No, exactly. And so I want to buy that Jason, which I'm essentially just making up and adding as a category when we
that's Sincere Fan Jason.
Sincere Fan Jason, because that to me makes him like the most grounded, relatable fanship situation I have, is knowing that he, like, the way that he loves Harry Potter, you could be a total stranger or the most famous person in the world, but if he zeroes in on the fact that you're willing to talk about it with him, he will go for like hours and talk about his obsession with it, which is kind of exactly what you're like when it comes to Star Wars. So I really love that. So I'm buying that. Then I am, that's a hard one. But let's just get it over with quickly. How Did This Get Made? Because I feel like I've had such a huge evolution through that. And I'm going to say Rent because it's a new episode every week. I'm not committing to one thing. It's like new. And I nailed it. It's a cute one. But if I didn't get a chance to see it again, would I suffer? No.
All right, we're going to do one last bit. This is a new bit that we created. It didn't have a name until Chris Royce joined us with Stevie, and he gave us a name for it during his recommendation segment. It's called a comparathon, and this is where we're going to put Jason up against some. I just picked a random list of people, but some leading men, right? These are folks who have, Paul Scheer maybe not as much, but anyways, I'm gonna put them up, and you gotta pick who you pick. You can give a little bit of rationale if you want to, but so let's start first. Ryan Gosling or Jason Mantzoukas? Leah.
Jason Mantzoukas.
Jason Mantzoukas.
For sure. That's an easy one for me.
Ryan Gosling is just a generic, good-looking white man. I had to Google him to see which one he was.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, good. We're all on the same page. Okay, Mark Duplass, who is not just compete on the league, but an auteur himself. Mark Duplass or Jason Mantzoukas?
Are we talking about Duplass as an actor, or
Just Duplass
in
in general? I mean, you can pick any Duplass you want.
I'm still gonna go Zooks, because, yeah.
And Leah?
I'm still gonna go Zooks. I think the Duplass brothers, it's been really interesting to watch their evolution. But I'm pretty sure I know which one this is. So again, I'm the worst. But I think I'm still gonna go Zooks.
All right. Okay. This is the one where my wife would fall off because she's going to pick The Rock every time. She loves The Rock.
I gotta tell you.
The Rock or Mantzoukas?
The Rock. I'm gonna go The Rock. I mean, I love Zooks, but like, give me The Rock in a Jumanji film. Whoa. Oh, I'm sorry. But I feel like Mantzoukas would understand the need for me to select The Rock, so that's okay.
Leah?
He would be on board with that.
I think it would be really nice to cuddle The Rock. Like, he's just a mountain. And in this COVID time where, like, I live alone, like, to think about, like, sitting on a couch next to The Rock, who I think is probably, like, a super touchy-feely dude, even as a stranger. So I'm only going to go with The Rock because I think he would let me, like, lean on him without taking a COVID test.
So I'll stick with Zooks, but what I now realize as having put this up, I really want to see The Rock Zooks buddy comedy.
Yes.
And it can be a romantic comedy. Like it can be that romantic action comedy, or it can just be a romantic comedy. Like almost like a Hitch type thing. I don't know.
Where The Rock plays Mantzoukas' therapist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like The Rock channeling his character more so from Be Cool, right? Like, do you remember the Get Shorty sequel where he plays the actor, the sort of very sensitive?
Oh, yes. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, now this is the toughest one of all because this is Paul Scheer or Mantzoukas. I mean, part of the point of these games is to make your lives very difficult. Paul Scheer or Mantzoukas?
In the context of just everything, or in the context of how to... it's so funny. Since I started listening to the mini episodes regularly, I've gotten more and more attached to Paul Scheer, whereas I feel like just from How Did This Get Made, it would always be Zooks. So, but I'm going to stick with Zooks on this one.
Leah?
I think that June is secretly very strong.
Oh,
and
secretly, she's
ripped. And
physically.
I think she's
strong.
Physically strong.
Oh yeah, I believe that.
And I would never want her to hate me. I
would be terrified of crossing June.
Yeah.
June is someone you either want to be on her good side or not on her radar at all. She is tough as nails, that one.
Yeah.
But you'd want her on your side if there was a fight.
Absolutely. So in order to respect June, I've got to go with Zooks. But I also want to recognize that, like I said earlier, without Paul Scheer, when do we get to meet Zooks? So it is with deep respect to June Diane Raphael that I'm picking Zooks here.
That is fair. So I'm gonna go with Paul, and I'm gonna use that to segue into our recs and shoutouts because Paul's performance on Black Monday is the type of role that that Jason's got to get. And so I love Zooks, of course, but Paul is leveling up in terms of what he's been allowed to do as an actor. Mm-hmm. And you saw a glimpse of it actually in the moment in The Disaster Artist where he plays the director who won't accept the misbehavior of that main character, the Wiseau
Tommy
guy.
Wiseau.
Yeah. And then I was like, wow, Paul Scheer can really act. Cool. And Black Monday is that. So I want to see Zooks get his Black Monday moment. So I'm going to go with that. All right. And with that, we will hit our recs and shout-outs. Leah, what are your recommendations and your shout-outs? Leah, sorry.
My recommendations are the podcasts that keep me company right now. Like I said, I'm living alone. I need podcasts that make it feel like there are people in my house. And so these are the podcasts that when there's a new episode, I'll listen to it first. So there's the Jackie and Laurie Show, which are it's on Max Fun. They're two women in their 50s, stand-up comics who have been on the road for 30 years.
Wow.
And it is, and they talk about the industry and making comedy and trying to make comedy in COVID and the inequalities that women have faced in comedy and what they're seeing change for women coming up today that it's different than what they faced. So I just admire them so much. I've seen them both do stand-up live in Chicago.
That's
so
awesome.
The Jackie and Laurie Show it's on Mondays, and it is the first thing I listen to on a Monday morning.
Oh, awesome.
I will be adding that right now.
It's so good.
Becky and I are now Max Fun Diamond contributors.
Wow.
Yeah. Separately, too. Like, it's not like one shared account. And
yeah. Then I love Nicole Byer, so Why Won't You Date Me, which is her dating podcast. But she has not said this, but she has not announced, like, I'm doing this thing. But since the Black Lives Matters protests started, she has not had a white guest. And it's been phenomenal. Because she said once in passing on a podcast, like, I just can't even talk to white people right now. And she has a different Black or person of color guest on every week. And ostensibly they're talking about dating, but the show has grown. And if you started at it at the beginning, Nicole's public evolution of what she shares about herself has been so phenomenal. And it is not a kid-friendly show, but it is. I've listened to this show since week 1, and I've listened every week. So Why Won't You Date Me? I love. And then I also love the Doughboys. Nick Weiger, Mike Mitchell. It's two guys with a comedy podcast about fast food that Jason was a guest on, and that's how I found them.
That would be very enabling for me. I don't think I could listen to it. Like, I would just be like ordering fast food constantly if I love it.
Yeah, it's a problem. Straight up, it's a problem. But those are my shout outs.
Those are awesome. Those are great. I subscribe to like everything but the Doughboys, and that's purely because of the enabling part. As you were talking, Beck, what are you into?
So I just on your rec, Shai, I just started Upload.
Andy Allo, she is the future. I like the woman who plays Nora.
Yeah, oh, she's awesome.
I have gone
like the reason to watch.
Deep in understanding her. Like, she is a musician, a writer, a director, an actor. I watched her do like an Instagram live conversation the other day. She just seemed like that is on my list of famous people I want to be friends with.
So I just started Upload. I saw one app. I thought it was really cute. I'm going to keep watching it. We'll keep
very
it posted.
Canadian. Also, very
Canadian. And the virtual reality space that it takes place in, I guess, this like fake heaven. I got to tell you, so far, I'm like, that does seem like my heaven. Like a beautiful, fancy resort lodge on a lake in the mountains. I'm like, that's my perfect weather. Vlad and I, my husband and I, have had lots of conversations about why that's my perfect exact temperature that I want to be at all times. So that does feel like heaven.
Keep watching this show.
I know. I'm sure it's going to go off the rails. I'm sure it's going to go off the rails. But F1, I'm like, I would have been convinced by that marketing. Just got to say, to go there. And I started watching a dad rake on Netflix. It's an Australian show. And what is amazing about the show is, besides the fact that it's so well made, is like every episode there is a guest star who's a super, like every single famous Australian actor shows up. Like you're watching, you're like, oh my God, that's that guy. And then that's that guy. And then you don't even know what these people are from. But if you've ever seen an Australian actor in anything, they were on Rake. And it's so satisfying.
Our dad.
Hugo Weaving is in the first episode, and Sam Neill is in the first season. And it's got like all of these great, Rachel Griffiths, I think is her name. She was the one that was on 6 Feet Under. Like every single Australian actor shows up on it. Anyways, it's super cool so far.
Australians bring it.
And without repeating my Netflix unscripted reality documentary shows that I keep repeating every week, I started a new one. I started the wellness series. Let's just say people are cuckoo bananas. So if you want to take some satisfaction in seeing how crazy other people are, watch that show. But it's a little unsettling, so I don't know.
I do not like reality shows, but I like fake reality shows.
It's a documentary. It's like I'm going to do documentary in loose quotes. It's a documentary show.
I like fake reality shows, as you know, and I'll probably have said this multiple times with all the episodes lately, but I just finished Bajillion Dollar Properties. I wish it could go on forever, but it was a very funny ending.
Just start watching Selling Sunset. It does continue. You'll have 3 more seasons if you watch Selling Sunset.
And then I started Burning Love at the recommendation.
Oh my God, I started Burning Love too.
It is really
It's so funny. I can only watch 1 episode at a time because it's too much.
And every great person. June is in the first episode. Yes. And every great
Janet
person.
Varney, and it's got so many.
Kristen Bell, and even a hilarious Jennifer Aniston cameo.
Shocking cameo.
Wow, that was hilarious. So I'm really enjoying fake reality. All right, Leah, host of Finding Favorites with Leah Jones. I feel like we kind of sneakily made your own Finding Favorites episode.
You did
here today, which I honestly, I am genuine. Like, this is the magic of your show. I feel so happy now having talked about favorites with someone. And it's just like, it's raised my what's the endorphin? I don't know.
The
all
endorphins,
those things.
Yeah.
I'm happier.
Some
now.
positive brain chemicals.
So I hope you got to feel the happiness of what your show does for people while we talked about one of your favorite things.
It's really nice to talk to people about Jason Mantzoukas, where I don't have to say, well, do you watch this show? Do you watch this show? When I was talking to our rabbi emeritus of our synagogue, how I got him to understand who Jason Mantzoukas was John Wick 3.
Oh,
the rabbi had seen John Wick 3, but not The Good Place.
Got it. The rabbi should watch The Good Place. So where can people follow you and follow this show?
I am on Twitter. I'm at Chicago Leah. And the show on Twitter is Finding Faves Pod. And it's available, I think, everywhere you can get podcasts.
Yeah,
I've tried really hard to get it everywhere.
It is, and it is awesome. That's great. Becky, where can people follow you?
You can follow me at Paper BK Princess on Twitter. That's it.
And you can follow me at Pancake and the number 4 table, Pancake 4 table on Twitter and Instagram. And you can follow all the Friday Night Movie shenanigans at Fry Night Movie on Twitter and Instagram, or FridayNightMoviePod.com. Please rate and review us. Very important thing to our family is we are supporting the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and the Equal Justice Initiative as part of our solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. Very important, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund has a whole section on voting rights, okay? People have been very concerned about the vote in November and the post office and people's access to voting. Guess what? This isn't the first time access to voting has been prevented by nefarious forces in our country. So checking out the NAACP's work on voting rights is really worthwhile. And if you think it is really, really worthwhile and you'd like to make a donation, you'd be in good company because it's something we are doing on a regular basis. And last but not least, our theme music will kick in. It is by What Does It Eat, a small little duo from Montreal who is not really from Montreal anymore. That's myself and Howie. And we have a new record out that is on Spotify and iTunes and all the fun places. It is called Sidecar, a song cycle tribute to 1980s and 90s TV characters. And that is in fact what it is. 16 minutes with various musical motifs talking about characters that you'll really have to dig deep into IMDb to listen to. And with that, we always do a little dance in our seat at the end of the show. And we wish you a wonderful day. And thank you, Leah, for being with us. Bye.
Bye.